So excited to be joined by Adam Granduciel, War on Drugs. I just keep going back to your childhood. Your mother gave you some early musical influences, but they were very limited to 40% of the Traveling Wilburys. It was Roy Orbison and George Harrison.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then it was your brother who turned you on to some of the other stuff like Joni and Neil and Dylan, but Hendrix.
Yeah.
And now we fast forward and we are downstairs at the Electric
House
Lady
of Hendrix.
Studios.
Yeah.
So how cool is that to be in that moment?
We actually did a lot of the finishing recording of the record here in like January, February. There was still some like loose ends to tie up in, like, oh, this needs some like a new level of like spirit, and we kind of all set up in the live room, and which is like the most comfortable room to record in that we'd ever been in, and tied a lot of the loose ends together for some of the songs. And,
I know you're a studio junkie. Like, you want to know who was where and what was done there and how it was done.
Yeah.
So did you feel the ghosts?
Oh yeah. Well, we even heard the stories, just like where the drums were in the corner of the room behind like 4, floor to ceiling baffles was like pretty much where they stay 95% of the time. So every record that you've heard that's here that's where the drums are, and that's the drum sound. And then Eddie Kramer likes them in one other specific spot for certain kind of rock drum. But it's pretty cool to be like, if this is where the drums were for Voodoo, then this is where we're going to keep them, It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's
special place.
I should mention that the new record, A Deeper Understanding, is absolutely gorgeous.
Thanks.
You have to feel like we got a home run.
I'm just happy we finished it. It was the last couple months was like I think I worked on it like every day for 3.5 months in different in LA, and then I moved to New York in January, and was in and out of different studios for about 3.5 months, and then flew back and mixed it with Sean in like 3 weeks.
So I've read that you viewed this as your LA album.
Right.
But what exactly does that mean?
I think it means I was living there, and I had a studio rented. I was writing out there and recording, but the rest of my band and the guys that I kind of toured with obviously for 2 years, and that we kind of made this gel together, were still on the East Coast. And so obviously I knew that it was going to be a record with those guys, but that was like kind of like the one thing that was standing between us like getting super deep on it or something, was the fact that they could only come out for maybe like 8 or 9 days at a time to start. And so it was an interesting way to work, just because I'd kind of record all these demos and they'd come out and we kind of learn them all and record ideas, and then they'd go home for 2 months and come back for another 2 weeks or so. And then once we started really recording it in late June of that year, 2016, they were out for a full month. And we recorded different studios in LA, and then it was like more stuff was done out there, and then I kind of took the hard drives to the East Coast and worked in New York for 3 months. So
you mentioned the quintessential LA album being the second Zevon album,
right?
But you resisted the temptation to go down that road,
right? Actually, today we're going to do one of those songs. Just to be sure, I'm talking about Excitable Boy.
Well, I was going to ask you that.
So is that not the second one?
That's actually the third.
It is the third. Okay, I realized that the other night. I was like, I kind of said that without actually knowing.
The first one, though, was before he went over to Germany and fell into a bottle, and it was called Wanted Dead or Alive, and it's not really up to the quality.
Okay.
And the first one that most people recognize is Warren Zevon,
right.
And it's got the blue cover.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like Excitable Boy in that it's got a lot of session players and guest stars and all of that. So either one of those.
So it is the third. Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
But
15 months in the studio for this one?
Yeah, thereabouts, yeah.
So you're obsessive about things, right?
I feel like...
Did you have a hard time saying, this is done now? Because after 16 months, it's just like you could endlessly work on it, right?
Yeah, I think this time around, I was pretty fried. Like, things get to a point where you're like, I have to finish this. but I was ready to finish it. Like I knew it was like everything. There was a few songs that up until really the last like 3 weeks weren't really part of like this of the record, and like I didn't know. I was like, there's these other songs that didn't really come together, but then even the version of Holding On that's on the record, I'd been working on like a completely different version of that for like 6 months, and then me and Sean were both like, at different points of the same night, we were both like, we should listen to the original from last year because that had some magic. And when we opened it up, we were just kind of like, oh, it's all there. Like, I don't know what we've been searching for. And we kind of opened that version up and then like pretty much tracked the vocals and tied it up in like a week. It was like really fast. But it's cool. But it's like, it had kind of still been lived in for a while, but we just hadn't really looked at it in a while, in like 6 months or so. And same with the first song, Up All Night. It was like living in this weird kind of middle ground, and then I took these 2 versions and squeezed them and then finished it really quickly.
You know, the first taste that we had of the album was Thinking of a Place.
Right.
And, you know, radio is famously not all that great with 11-minute songs.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
But we listened to it and it was just sort of like, you know, we kind of need to play this. And so we started playing it and we've been playing it ever since. That started out inspired by a place in South Dakota?
Weird, yeah, kind of. Lyrically, I was kind of like I always have when we track live, I'm never prepared enough to have everything written. Who is? So.
Well, your scratch vocals can just
right,
go
so that's
anywhere,
the thing.
right?
So I always leave it up to. Like, some have a few lines. Like I had the line "Thinking of a Place," but I didn't have like some of the verses. And when I was listening back to the scratches, I was like, "What am I saying there?" And then I was like, it sounded like I was saying Little Bend. And then I kind of like went down this little Google wormhole of like Little Bend, and then I was like, oh, it's an actual place. I think there's a few different ones, but the one I kind of gravitated towards was just like this, like kind of this trailer park, but almost like a destination, like a vacation destination on like the banks of the Missouri River. I was like, oh, this is really cool. And I kind of like.
So you've never been there?
No, I've never been there. No.
Because it felt like from what I've read that it started out as a travel log, you know, and there's such a history of some of the people that you've related to, whether it's like the hobo on the train, you know, the Dylan kind of image, or, you know, Herman Hesse in The Spiritual Quest, or Jack Kerouac on the road. Right. But maybe it diverged a little bit from that? Yeah,
well, that's the thing. I think once I kind of had like an idea, that place, I was like, and we had driven that general way probably 15 times over the last 10 years on tour. And I think I just started thinking about like some of those drives that we've taken and some of the times we've driven across the country. But now it's a place I definitely want to go, which is pretty exciting. But
you know, I just always think that it's really amazing to look at an artist's sort of story arc. And you know, you were an artist and you were listening to music while you painted, and you were like sort of like, I really need to go do that.
Right.
You know, it was like you got called by a different muse.
Yeah, music was like my first thing, like the first thing I gravitated towards, I think, and the thing that I like stayed with the whole time. I just didn't know, like for so long, I just didn't know enough about like the other side of it, which was like anything other than like playing guitar and learning guitar, and I didn't know anything about like making records or anything. So I was lucky that I kind of met a bunch of people as I got older and started falling into different scenes and like learning more about like how to record or how to record with a band or like all these different things, and just kept getting more and more inspired every day.
Community was really important to you.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't like super driven musically where I felt like I needed to like get this out of me or something. It's been very grateful for all the people I've met and learned from.
Do you recognize that guy from that studio painting all those years ago?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Still in there.
Yeah, he's still there. Yeah.
Yeah. I know that you're really busy and
probably just as good a painter as he was then.
I know that you have to go commune some more with the ghosts of Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
And you've got lots of things to do, but I really appreciate the time.
Yeah.
And again, just a spectacular album, A Deeper Understanding.
Thank you.
The War on Drugs, and folks can find out more at thewarondrugs.net.
Yeah.
And thanks so much.
Thanks very much. Thank you.